let's just assume for a minute that many of our gamers, especially our younger gamers, haven't played the original. So let's start out. What is Castle Wolfenstein, for those who don't know?
Castle Wolfenstein was the game that started the first-person shooter. And it was arguably the first game to sort of let you move around in the first person, which means looking out of your own eyes as opposed to seeing the character. And nothing short of revolutionary as far as that goes. I mean, everybody just went, wow, what's this? And of course, we've had how many things follow that, that have tried to recapture that.
Now, what was the gaming industry like at the time? Like, what were the rest of the games that people were playing like, just to compare differently?
Wow, I mean, this is back in the days that flight simulators were pretty heavy back then. That was a pretty big deal, Red Baron, that kind of stuff. We were playing all that. We had Ultima, lots of top-down kind of stuff, side-scrollers. And this was just such a leap in the amount of visceral experience that you got in that web. I'm here. I'm actually in this room. And if I want to go left, I can go left. And if I want to go right, I can go right. Couldn't look up and down back then, but we kind of thought we could. We imagined a lot,
And how were you inspired to do that? What is it that made you think of a first-person shooter?
Well, I'm not the one who created that, so we're doing the remake. But that was the, John Carmack and John Romero, Adrian Carmack, those guys. Those are the ones who put that together. And I think it started as kind of a rendering test almost in a way. Like, can we do this? And it sort of turned into an entire gaming genre based out of that.
Now, did they anticipate that this game would create an entire genre?
No.
No,
nobody did.
Did you anticipate that to this day so many people would still be playing the game?
It's funny because after Wolfenstein, it did Doom, of course, which was phenomenal as well. And our company got into the first-person shooter business because we just liked them so much. And I remember several publishers telling me, this is a fad, people aren't going to want to do this. This is like a couple of years and this will all be over with. And it's just like, no, this is a firm genre now. This is its own thing.
Now, it was, at the time, it was the most violent game of its time. I mean, was there slack for that? We're talking about gaming and violence now as opposed to then.
It's weird. I mean, it reminds me of something I read in Time magazine the other day talking about some first-person shooters and how completely violent they were. And yet, in the same breath, they'll mention other games like they were talking about Shogun, The Art of War, which is, you have, thousands of these samurai, butchering each other out on the plain. I think if you're looking at it from top down and the guys are really, really small and it's the same amount of violence, people are kind of like, oh, that's okay, but it's like when you're down in the trenches there with it, it seems to change sort of that perception of it.
So the first person.
Yeah, it does. It seems to make it more visceral. It makes it more real.
Now, so why carry it over to a new game? Why not just start over with something totally different?
Well, it's a great brand. I mean, so many people know it. It's one of the top 5, I think, recognized PC game titles of all time. So there's been so much speculation about it, people calling id and publishers and saying, is someone going to do something with this again? We want to play more. We want more. And it has never been really addressed. So it's like the time was just there. We think the technology is there with Quake 3. It enabled us to do what we really want to do with it, which was to make these vast expanses of these castles and outdoor areas and other fun things that you haven't seen yet.
Yeah. Of course, it was easier also to kill the bad guys. They were Nazis.
Yeah,
was that
it still is.
An idea from the get-go?
It's a timeless sport, really. 91, 01, just killing Nazis just still seems to reign supreme, and everybody, has no real problem with that part of it, except the German government. They're not so wild about it, but
now, when you created the new version.
Yep, sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sure.
You all right? All right.
Okay. Are we good?
Yeah.
Do you want me to button this up or something? Or?
No, it's showing the thread behind it.
Okay. Chick Diggett.
Okay, now, when you decided to carry over to a new version of the game, what were the priorities, really? The most important, like what kind of mission statements did you have? What were the most important things you felt you needed to carry over?
When we let's see, I'm trying to think of a good way to encapsulate your question into the answer, so you don't have to go nuts with that. When we started the design process for Wolfenstein, the biggest thing that we wanted to carry over was fun, and that was the thing that people seemed to have the most in the first game. Good time. A lot of first-person shooters subsequent to Wolfenstein have incorporated a lot of very realistic elements, having to reload your weapons, stealth tactics, squads of guys. I mean, there's some very complicated stuff out there, and this return to Castle Wolfenstein is almost kind of retro in a way. I mean, it really kind of harkens back to that sort of golden age of the first-person shooter, even with but having all the freedom that we have with the engines now, which is to be able to look up and down and have vast expanses. But it's about fun.
Were there any things you felt that you could leave out in the new version, any aspects of the game that you
It's funny that the original game has different meaning and different remembrances for different people. It's almost like radio. We've been talking about that, and that if I listen to The Shadow and the guy along the block listens to it, back in the 40s or whatever, we see the hero looking differently. We imagine him a certain way. We imagine the hero's lair to look a certain way. And when you try to realize that, it might or might not meet someone's expectations. Well, I imagined it to be this way. And the first game really had that effect. I know it had that effect on me. I hadn't played it since I played it like 4 times in a row originally, and got myself kind of almost burned out because I played it again and again and again. And when I went back and played it, it was very different from how I remembered it because we've had this culture of first-person shooters subsequent to the original game. So it's like we imagined a lot of things that really weren't in there. Our minds filled in the blanks with the graphics and with the sounds and all that. We thought there was more going on than there almost really was. And that's magic, and that's what id did so well is they created that environment that allowed you to kind of dream inside of that space.
So did you take all of those blanks that you filled in and make a point of putting them in the new game?
We've tried to fill in those blanks. Yeah, that's been tough because the blanks are sort of personal. They're the perceptual things that you pick up as an individual player, so they're very subjective. So that becomes the how can you please everybody. And there'll be a lot of things in here people will like. Some people will go, well, I wish you'd done this and wish you'd done that. You can't do everything. So we've had to stick with a firm line of fun. Simple, easy to get into, just a good time. Lots of Nazis running around.
Lots of Nazis. Let's actually talk about the new game.
Yes.
Let's just start there. Now, there are, of course, many, many differences. First, the engine.
Yeah, it's quite a difference. Yeah.
It's on the Quake 3 engine, so
yeah.
It's absolutely gorgeous. This version is plot-driven. It's not so much the same, just go from floor to floor and shoot Nazis.
Yeah. It would have been pretty difficult to do the new game and to have it be completely devoid of any sort of plot. I think, again, we imagined a plot in the first game, even though there wasn't really one there. It's like, well, there was kind of one. When you got to the end, it was like we sort of liberated the character out of the castle, but we knew we needed a more concrete plot for this. The thing that drove that were the design elements that everybody wanted to have in. We wanted to have Nazis, of course, first and foremost. We also wanted to have the occult play a big role because it actually kind of did in the first game. There were occult references, even though they weren't probably realized as far as they could have been. Monsters, basically genetic mutations, stuff like that. Weird experimentation. So all of those things had to kind of fit into a plot, and that took us a while to take those disparate elements and kind of stir that up in the pot and get something we like. But I'm very, very happy with it now. There's a very big, nefarious underworld plot that unfolds that essentially, if you as the player don't stop it, it's like it could spell disaster for the Allies.
Can you give me kind of a quick plot synopsis without giving too much?
Yeah, I don't want to give too much away. Suffice it to say that Himmler and the SS played a huge role in this game in that they were the ones who were delving into all of this occult. They were the ones who were unearthing artifacts and researching into the occult and a lot of really bizarre stuff. So that kind of became our big tentpole there to kind of put everything around. And essentially there's a lot of unearthing of newly discovered artifacts that are being put together for something that's greater than sort of the parts there. It's like they're going to try and how can I say this without giving it all away, which I'm not supposed to do. It's very difficult because I have this like edit in my brain. Can't do that. I'm sorry I know you're burning tape here. I'm just trying to think of the best way to do this concisely for you in a bite. In a little sound bite. The plot basically centers around Himmler and the SS and a lot of sort of fictional divisions of the SS that didn't really exist but that we've built, an occult division that we have, a paranormal division, the genetic scientists. and their desire to basically create something, a power, an evil power under their control that will spell complete disaster for the Allies and the free world.
So multiple hours of gameplay.
Oh, yeah.
Hours.
And I think what's interesting, too, I mean, I've played, some of these levels now probably like, 300-400 times. And I was playing the build even last night. It's like I still am having a great time with it. And that's always a good sign. I mean, literally I'm in and, screaming and yelling. And I hear people from other offices because something really fun happened. Little silly things like we have the Nazis able to pick up grenades and throw them back at you. You throw a grenade at them, they'll pick it up and they'll throw it back. And in the beginning, it's when that happens to you, you're like, oh, man, because they'll kill you with your own grenade. But then you learn, I got to hold on to it a little bit longer. And then you see them bend down to pick it up and they blow up. And it's very satisfying. It's just this awesome, satisfying thing. You see the guy go, I almost got it. Boom. Sorry. Catch. That's the thing you say when you throw it. Catch. Sure.
Now, there's a multiplayer element to this game.
Yeah.
Now, how does that work? Is it a deathmatch or?
Well, Return to Castle Wolfenstein. Let me start again. Return to Castle Wolfenstein. Let me start again and give you a little space for editing. Return to Castle Wolfenstein is built on the Quake 3 Arena engine, which is a multiplayer engine. So suffice it to say, there will be a strong multiplayer component to the game because we're built on top of this awesome multiplayer engine. We're playing around right now with variations on the multiplayer theme, but first and foremost, this is a single-player experience. That's the main thing that we want to have be really, really, really great, is that you can sit by yourself in a room with the lights turned down and the sound turned up and get really creeped out and really immersed and really have a great time.
Do you think this one's the title going to keep going? Do you think you'll do it again?
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of interest in it right now. People's reaction at E3 has been really, really good, which the publisher always go, that's nice, everybody's really digging it. So I don't know what can happen with it. It's pretty open-ended,
Now, here's the question. How do you think first-person shooters are going? Let's imagine Quake 7. Let's move up a bunch. Where do you think they're going to go?
They're going, first-person shooters are kind of fracturing into sort of subgenres right now. And you have things like Rogue Spear or SWAT, which are these tactical first-person simulators where you have a lot of strategy elements. You have guys you have to sort of give orders to, and it's very, very complicated, sort of encumbered gameplay, but a lot of people really dig that. And you have this sort of renaissance of the pure action game. I mean, Soldier of Fortune was very much like that. Let's get in there, let's have a good time. And I think that's sort of the two main streams that they're going in. People are also experimenting with hybridizing first-person games, which is to put action or adventure elements or role-playing elements into them. I think you'll see a lot more of that. That's going to be tough. It's really, really, really hard to do right. Not that it can't be done, but there's going to be some littered bodies on the highway out there before somebody really, figures out how to do that correctly.
Now let's imagine that's 5 years in the future. Be visionary and think 10 years. Where do you think games in general are going to be?
In 10 years, I have a kind of a weird vision. I think that most games will probably belong to a persistent kind of universe at that point. It seems fairly fait accompli at this point, like we're going in that direction. I think television is going to wind up mutating kind of with games in a big way. I think you have a lot of interest in taking big franchises that exist, science fiction, fantasy franchises that exist on TV, and not just tuning in to watch them, but like logging in and like going, well, I'm going to just observe the drama that unfolds 24 hours a day, or I'm going to be a part of it like a crew member or this or that or whatever. And, EverQuest has probably shown us a lot of that, which is that there's a great desire to have a persistent world that we can get into and be a part of. And there's still some problems with that, but I think those are going to be overcome certainly in the next 10 years. And graphically, we're going to be at photoreal for sure in 10 years. Yeah, I don't know, but I think probably something behind neural shunts behind your ear, a little cable you'll plug in. Now, they have some pretty freaky technology. They can write laser beams right over your eyeballs and do all sorts of crazy stuff. But it's scary to think that when games will literally be indistinguishable from a film or television, that has to impact not just the content, but the delivery medium as well. I think it's probably going to wind up, there's going to be a huge convergence that we can't even speculate on now.
Yeah, now imagine that, a first-person shooter in that completely immersive environment. Do you think that's going to affect people or at all? Do you think that could be a dangerous thing? I mean, I know it's a weird question.
Yeah, I mean, but, you know, it's the whole problem with you know, developing technology. This is a Mount Everest thing, basically, for me. It's like, well, why do people make violent games? Well, because you can. It's like, you know, why did you climb the mountain? Because it's there. It's going to go on because we can do it. And, you know, we've obviously had some pretty tragic stuff that's happened out there, and I don't want to get into that whole thing because it's a huge, you know, 55-gallon drum of worms, as we like to say. But I don't think that we're ultimately the ones who are responsible for all of that. You know, it's content control and people making sure that, like, it's not getting in the wrong hands of the wrong person. Because, you know, if you're sort of uncorked to begin with, it's anything could set you off. I know I'm like that. In fact, this camera is really no.
Don't hurt the camera. Now, let me just backtrack a little bit and ask you about yourself. Mm-hmm. Now, did you always plan to be a game designer? Is that what you wanted to do?
Not to be a game designer. I think I planned when I was like 9 to be a professional game player because I thought that would be really cool. I didn't know there wasn't such a job, but can I just like play games all day and somebody pay me to do that? Well, it's called beta testing, but that's not really very fun because you don't get play the same part over and over and over again. I played, and I'm an old guy. I'm 41, so I've been around. I've watched this stuff kind of come up out of the ground. There have not always been video games. The first game that I played was actually in a mall when I was a kid, like 9. I think it was called Space War, and it was pre-Asteroids, pre-Pong even, this thing, and it was just something fascinating about this black and white TV with these little dots moving around. I was like, oh my God, what is this? This is like so cool. So there's been a great fascination with that for me, you know, from that moment on, and of course I owned every game system. Probably what got me more interested in game design was when I was doing documentary film work, I got to do something with American Airlines, and I go into a simulator, a DC-10 simulator. And it's like, now this is a video game, you know, a $10 million video game that was on motion, you know, platform with hydraulics and collimated optics and wraparound screen and sound, you know. It's like, wow, it's like really flying a plane. This is cool. I'd like to go into an arcade and do this. Of course, you'd have to charge people $1,000 a ride, but that was what 92 when that was going on. So it's like, 82. Oh wow, see how old I am? I forgot. It's already memory's gone. So, but that really sort of sealed the deal for me. What I wanted to do is try and take this simulator experience and get it into games as much as I could.
So how did you make that a profession? Because now game developer is a pretty clear career path. Well, class they can take, they know what classes they need to take in school. How did you get from the flight simulator to actually designing and developing games?
Well, I was, you know, supporting myself as a director, cameraman, and I started doing it as a hobby, really, and some people saw some work that I was doing and said, you know, you should, you know, get involved with this. And I took a huge cut in pay and basically kind of apprenticed my way into the biz because I thought it was really cool and I really wanted to do it. And kind of got fed up with dealing with, you know, the bureaucracies that I had to deal with early on, so I started my own company. And it's no different now. I still have to deal with all this.
And how did the returns you have for Wolfenstein come upon you? How did you get into that?
Well, our company is Gray Matter Interactive right now, but we are members formerly of Xatrix Entertainment, and Xatrix did work with id Software on the mission pack for Quake 2, The Reckoning, and we got to know the guys then, and you know, I think, you know, like virtually every other developer in the free world, we go, hey, you guys going to do something with that Wolfenstein license? And you know, they don't know about that. So we kept bugging them, and finally, you know, they kind of went, you know what? Yeah, why don't you guys go off and do this? So, I mean, it was persistence paid off, essentially.
All right, very cool. I have one more question for you, which is, Castle Wolfenstein, the original game, is only available at Rare's site. You know, you can't actually buy the game anymore, per se. Can you please, as a favor to all of us gamers, think it will be included as a demo on the version 2 CD? Will there be access to it, re-release of the classic maybe?
That's such a great idea.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. You know, let's check in. Let's all keep our fingers crossed that would be something we could pull off.
Because there's really no way to get the full playable version of the game. There's only the demo on the website. The full version
I think
not around.
they're actually, Activision did, and this is just off the record, but I think Activision actually did release it like a year ago. They sort of bundled it with something else. The whole thing, they did a Wolfenstein Gold, because I actually have the disc. And it's updated. It works under Windows with sound and all that. Because I had the original discs, which I could not get to work. I mean, because you needed 612K of RAM back in those days. And now it's like, memory managers and all this. It's like no sound, no nothing. But no, there's a version of it floating around. But
could you re-answer that question about we hope we can stand alone?
I'm sorry, which one?
Let's hope that happens. That doesn't really stand alone.
Oh, let's hope that they bundle or get the whole thing through.
If you wouldn't mind.
Get access to it.
Hey, when we ship Return to Castle Wolfenstein, let's hope that the original game is bundled in there with it. That'd be kind of cool.
Very cool. Make all of us very happy.
Woohoo!
All right.
As
Thank
Homer
you
would say.
very, very much.
All right.
All right. Yeah. Oh, it's